Hello, boys and girls, men and women of all ages, shapes, and sizes. That is not the podcast intro. Hello, welcome to Those on Biscuits, your beloved, usual, weekly, live podcast streamy thing where we talk about movies, comics, our week, and John's latest embarrassing fast food stories. I am your friend, Owen Adams, and with me is your best friend, your best pal, your lovely schoolyard chum, Jonathan Cadotte. How are you, John?
I'm doing all right. And yes, I am your best friend, regardless of what others may say. They're liars. I am your best friend. I'm your only friend. I own you.
Chilling words from a future that can be yours if you subscribe to the Those on Biscuits podcast channel. Yeah. If you are new here, this is a show where it's a talk show, basically. We talk about stuff. We do topics. We do... we mostly, these days, I think, talk about superhero movies. That's like a dominant theme, but we talk about other stuff, too. And, yeah, that's what we do. It's live. It's usually about 2 hours long. And you can ask questions. We don't do questions if you've been to, for example, one of my other live streams or video game live streams. You may be familiar with lots of answering questions. We get to them in sessions. So if you feel like we're ignoring you, we aren't. But other than that... Yeah, see, I'm not doing a great intro today, am I? I've completely forgotten what we normally do here. I'm a total professional, can you tell? Welcome to the show. You might be listening to this later on. It's been a while since I've done one, I think, actually. You may be listening to this...
Yeah, it seems to have been my job lately.
Yeah. You may be listening to this live on iTunes. You may be listening to this through many different manners. But however you are, it's always the same show. And welcome. Welcome. Yeah. So, how have you been in the week since last we spoke, John? In the week, the 7 days... since last we talked to one another an hour and a half ago when we played Destiny.
I've been doing well. I'm over my sickness, which kind of dominated my existence.
Do you mean you're better, or do you mean in like the fashionable Valley Girl, I'm over, like I'm over it now, like I'm done, like it's getting old, girlfriend?
Oh, like it's still miserable, but it's just like whatever.
Right.
Gag me with a spoon.
It was so last week.
Right. Lyme's disease was so last week.
So, I want to hear the story, because you told me you got Lyme disease, right?
Well, it's still... the jury's still out on it, because... Here's the thing, I'm pretty sure my doctor has called me a few times... to tell me like what the test results are and everything, but I work during the day, and they seem to keep calling me during the day, and I don't have an answering machine on purpose. I purposely do not have an answering machine.
Makes sense.
And so they can't really leave me messages. So I'm sure they have called with an update whether or not I had Lyme disease or not. I mean, if I did, I still have it, and I'll have to do some treatment for that. But if not, then it was just a really bad viral infection.
Right. Okay. Well, Lyme's disease is potentially quite serious, right?
Yes, it can be quite serious. If it goes unchecked. Thankfully, like with humans, the Lyme disease is actually very easily treatable.
I love how
the body actually does.
You said that a little bit like you want one. You're like, with humans,
I preface this because my mom has a dog who has Lyme disease, and
is this where you tell me it can also be sexually transmitted?
If you want to get Lyme disease that way, Owen, by all means, go nuts. All right.
I was just worried we were heading for a disturbing revelation.
Just remember, those dogs can't consent. All right, you monster.
So you've been a bit sick.
Yeah,
you got a bit of the man flu, bit of the sniffles.
And you know what's actually really funny about that? You know how you hear this, like, oh, men always cry about being sick, and they,
right.
Well, there's been a lot of recent studies lately that are suggesting that men actually do suffer from symptoms worse.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. Like, because like the male immune system actually attacks diseases in a much more ferocious manner.
It could be true, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're the one that's sick means I'm obliged to say yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's obligatory, I guess.
How you feeling now, though? You better? You feeling a little bit better?
No, I'm all sorts of better.
Oh, good. So probably not Lyme disease then.
Hopefully not, but that is one of those things where like it flares.
So Lyme disease is like it is purely from ticks, right? Like that's the only way you get it. Am I right?
I believe so.
For people who don't like, this is what I understand about Lyme disease, and if I'm wrong, correct me on this. But when you get bitten by a tick, sometimes they have an internal parasite that comes from the head of the tick, right? It's called a spirochete, right? Which is an awesome name,
right?
For a terrible thing, and then that can infect you with basically this Lyme disease, which is kind of is it like an autoimmune thing?
It sounds like an awesome bird, the spirochete.
Right. It's like a bird
it's like
where you put your pen inside a plastic cog, and the bird spins around and draws nice patterns.
Right. It's like what the parakeet evolves into.
Right.
You know, if we lived in
Pokemon Land.
Pokemon World, yeah.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yeah, I do believe it's an autoimmune thing, and I think it targets the liver, gets hit pretty hard by it.
Right. So, did you get bitten by a tick that you know of, or was it a stealth tick?
Yes, I did get bit by a tick, which is why they were so quick about running the tests for Lyme disease.
Right, because I mean, if it's not Lyme disease, like, fine, great. But if you got bitten by a tick and get sick, you might as well work under that assumption straight away, you know?
Right. It's one of those things where, like, if they treat me for it, it's not going to hurt anything if I didn't have it. You know, it's not like the drugs.
The treatment for Lyme disease is to cut off your hand. But, but there's only like a 30% chance you've got it. They'll be like, let's run a few tests first, you know? Let's check on this. Can I get a second opinion? Nah, we're doing it.
No, we're just...
Best to be sure in these cases.
Yeah, hand please. Stop clenching. Just...
And they're like, oh, by the way, it's a really odd quirk of the disease. It has to be the hand you masturbate with.
No! They're taking both my hands.
And strangely enough, the milkman's. Why do they need his hand?
And that girl from 8th grade who showed me so many things.
And then she's like, John? I don't remember a John. Sorry, lady. Hand.
Any hand who's ever participated in the ejaculate process for this man has to be taken.
Somewhere down in tick society, they're like, yes, we have our finest weapon against mankind. The most obscure form of genetic engineering our scientists could conceive of. Many years we have prepped for this bizarre set of symptoms and treatment.
It's like, well, you didn't really stop them. You just mean that they can't masturbate. You might have actually made them reproduce more.
Silence! Take him away!
Take him to tick prison.
Tick prison's really great, though. You just sit there for 6 months till you get really fat and then you fall out.
Ticks are the worst.
They're pretty bad. And the worst thing is, like, first time I ever had to remove a tick from my cat, not this cat, long time ago, he came home after having a few days away because he was unneutered, so he would wander It was a long time ago.
He was on sabbatical.
People watching, new to your pets. He came back with this fucking thing around his neck, like the size of a like a peanut M&M. Like, we were like, is it like a cat tumor? Is that because I'd never seen one before at that time? Anyway, I'm like, okay, the tick's we gotta get the tick off. That's fine. And I'm looking up online how to get rid of ticks and things like that. And
did anyone ever give you like the match head technique?
What, were you supposed to burn them off, or like a lit match?
I ain't know. It's what you're supposed. Someone once told me that like an easy way to get rid of ticks is to take a match, you light it, you let it burn for a few seconds, and then you quickly wave it out, and then you press the ember to the tick, and the tick will back out.
Interesting.
On its own accord.
Because it will assume that the animal's on fire. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Just rip that bitch out.
So I took the tick out. And the thing about ticks is you have to be really careful to get the head, because if you don't get the head, that's the bit that gives you the Lyme disease. Right. And they stay alive and they crawl in and they become a different type of parasite. They're real nasty fuckers. Anyway, so and they can live. They have a whole separate life cycle without their body.
Right. In fact, they prefer it. They're like, oh, thank God. And like,
I pull this thing off.
That body's been weighing me down for years.
Right. I pull the thing off, and the body separates from the head, right? But that's fine, because if you can get the head, that's okay. It takes them like a few hours to then like crawl inside, you know? So I'm like, okay, we've got to wrench this head out. I wrench this head out. I take a piece of the cat's skin with it, unfortunately. Like, the cat is very upset by this. Was my first time doing it. I was doing my best. Anyway, and I put the head down. I put the body and I put the head down on a piece of tissue paper, right? And I let the cat go. And I'm talking to my dad because I've just finished doing it. When I've got my hand on the windowsill, I look down. The fucking head is walking towards my hand on its own with its little mandibles approaching. It was nearly sinking its teeth into me. And I go to grab it, and it falls on the floor, and the fucking head. It was like a scene from, The Thing, when they cut its head off.
Yeah, I was going to say The Thing.
Right. This tick's head is independently of any kind of body making its way towards us across a carpet. They are indestructible little bastards. Yeah.
That's why I made Molotov cocktails and burned my house down.
At least I'm not like fleas. Like, fleas... I mean, ticks are worse than fleas once you get bitten by one, but it does tend to be like one, you know? Whereas fleas, once you get them in, you can have them for months. Just phases of trying to get rid of the bastards. That was interesting, wasn't it? How are you? How are things? What are you talking about?
No, I'm doing good. I'm
glad you're better.
Yeah. But the funny thing is I get over my sickness, and then I immediately... Well, not immediately, but... I fell the other day, and it's the first time that I've fallen, and I should say not fallen, I tripped. But it's the first time that I've tripped, and to the point where I hit the ground in a very long time.
Right.
And that is such a weird feeling, because like I fell in such a way that I kind of... It didn't happen quick. That's the thing. Like, I kind of knew it the whole way down.
Yeah. You do. It's a weird thing about being an adult, isn't it? When you're a kid, falling is like the sudden thing. When you're an adult, it suddenly becomes this slow-motion nightmare.
Right. Like, I've been drinking, all right? I will say that.
This makes so much more sense.
Right. But the funny thing is that before I went out, I looked at my floor and I saw there was a pair of flip-flops, right? And I was like, I should pick those up and throw them by the door with the rest of the shoes. I'll do it later. I don't want to go out. So I go out, have a good time, get a ride home, walk into the house, stumble around in the kitchen for a little bit, trying to, do that, oh, God, I'm hungry sort of thing, where I'm just trying to get whatever food I can. And piece together something, throw it in the microwave, walk in the kitchen, see the flip-flops, step right on the flip-flops, and get tangled up in them, and I start going down, and the whole way it's just like, no, this could have been avoided. What have I done? I deserve everything.
Yeah. It's there's nothing, like, an accident is bad enough. There's nothing worse than an accident with the knowledge that it was your own fault.
Oh, yeah.
I always think, like, the worst things when you read about people who've died in ways, self-inflicted ways, where they've had time to think about it, I always think it must be the worst. Like, just the worst way to die. Any other way, like, it's not about the pain, it's not about that, but, like, people who fall to their death having done something dumb, like, I would hate that. Right, or I don't want my last thought to be, I'm such a fucking idiot.
or like shit like, you know, they're doing a home repair, and they, like, put the hammer, like, on the edge of the house, and they climb down the ladder, and they go grab something, and the hammer falls, and just spikes them through the head. You know, it's...
Well, did you ever see that guy who, he was on a ladder, and he dropped a nail gun, and it swung and fell and hit a bar, so it fell nail gun down into his chest. And there was the X-ray, and he lived, and he had, like, all the X-ray of all the nails in his chest.
Right.
And apparently,
I saw the one with the head.
The fact that the nails were still there kept him alive because it stopped his arteries from basically erupting.
Jeez.
Be terrible. The one that always strikes me.
I saw the one with the head.
The head one. There were like 10 in.
Yeah, like right in the back of his head.
Yeah. That's not good.
The one that always freaks me out is you can look it up online. Like, it's like the curious case of something Gage. I know that his last name is Gage, Gage.
Oh, I know this one.
Right, and this is a guy who, and this is actually where they first came across the idea of personalities being like a chemical thing, controlled by different parts of the brain. Because what had happened was this guy was like in the late 1800s, I want to say, or early 1900s. He was a construction worker, and there was an accident, and he fell, and he got a piece of steel rebarb through his face, up behind his eye, and then out the back of his head.
Right.
And he lived. And they managed to remove the piece of rebarb, but what made it interesting was when it was all said and done, and he was fully recovered, his personality changed drastically, like almost flipped on a dime. Because they say like he was a very kind, compassionate, easygoing guy, and then after that he became a very angry, quick-tempered, just no patience, mean person. It was weird.
Couldn't maintain any of his relationships either, like with people from before. Couldn't preserve his friendships and things like that because no one could, because he was just a different person. Yeah, it's fascinating. Have you seen the guy? Well, we're talking about weird mental illnesses. Have you seen the guy who had a form of encephalitis that left him? It destroyed the part of his brain that stores new memories. He used to be a composer. It stores the part of his brain that creates new memories. So now he has no new memories since it happened, but it also destroyed his existing memories. So he has no memory of his life before he gets sick, and he can't make any new memories. So his memories are confined to the very small amount of information that is kind of separate from that kind of thing. So he knows his name, for example, and he knows his wife, and he knew his wife's telephone number. So he had this encephalitis, and he was hospitalized for a long time, and they thought that he was going to be brain dead. Basically, that was going to kill him completely. And then he woke up, and the first thing he did was he phoned his wife, and he sent her a message that left her a message that just said, "Hi, I'm just phoning to let you know I'm awake." So he didn't remember what had happened to him, but he was aware that he'd just woken up. So he phoned to let her know,
Okay.
and then he phoned a minute later to let her know again, and then again, and again, and again, and again, for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Because every time his consciousness kind of reset, he got the sense that he'd just come round from being sick. So he's still alive, and you can talk to him today, and he is operating under the assumption that he has just woken up from a period of illness. Forever. And there are some really fascinating things. He was a really talented composer and expert in classical music. He can still play the piano, but after he plays a piece on the piano, he has what looks like a seizure. He's fine, but he has like a shaking and a seizure effect, and it's because he can play a piece from start to finish from almost entirely from muscle memory. He just knows what to play next. Right. From all the intuition and stuff that's built up in different areas of the brain. But when he finishes, the emotional response and the entire process of the experience floods him all at once from the entire song with no experience to no actual tangible memory of playing the song to anchor it to. So he suffers basically like an emotional overload from the music because it's not filed away anywhere. Which is fascinating, really fascinating person.
That's crazy, you know.
And he's still madly in love with his wife, but he doesn't remember when they met. Or he just knows that he knows her name. He recognizes her when he sees her, and he is still very much in love with her.
You know, and that's the stuff that I always love to hear about. Like I'm kind of a softie at heart. I'm not gonna lie. So like there's that really great video because like all those, you know, coming out of anesthesia videos, I kind of love those.
Right.
And I fully expect, you know, one of my loved ones to do the same thing to me when I eventually, if I go into anesthesia. But I love the one where the guy comes out of the anesthesia but doesn't remember at the moment that he's married. And when he sees his wife for the first time, to him it's like the first time he's seen her. And so he's like, you know, he has this conversation with her and basically tells her, you know, it's like wow, you're really pretty, you know, and then goes on and says like, wow, you're just really amazing. You're just an amazing person. And she eventually tells him like, you know, we're married, right? He's like, really? Wow. I'm super lucky.
Oh, that's so sweet. The ones I like, slightly different, but in terms of sentimental videos that get me, the ones of deaf children getting cochlear implants for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
They really get you right there, don't they?
You know, another one that gets me is that, like, here's the thing. I never had any inclination of, like, join the military. I mean, there was a time where I'm like, well, maybe I could. But, in all honesty, there was never really a chance that I was ever going to join the military. It's just not me. The coming home videos get to me quite a bit. Of the soldiers coming home. And, especially when they make a production out of it.
Right.
Those are kind of my favorite. There's one where this family, they're at a baseball game and they have it rigged up where they're supposed to win this contest. And so they bring them on the field, like, hey, you won the contest, and you know, you're gonna throw out the first pitch or something like that, and they have the mascot behind him just being a fucking just an asshole the whole time, just being obnoxious as hell, you know, you know, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience? And you know, they're like, oh yeah, you know, we wish that, you know, my husband was here, he could see this, but you know, our hearts are with him, and it's really sweet. And all of a sudden, the mascot takes off the helmet, and it's him. It's the husband home from the war. And you see this family almost just knock over like the announcer guy who's been talking to him, and just full-on sprint across this baseball field to give this guy a hug, and it's like that's like one of the most sweet things I've ever seen.
See, the normal version of those don't really get me, but the soldiers being reunited with dogs always gets me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because dogs are awesome.
Yeah. I also have a thing for like proposal videos.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why. Like they just I don't know. But
it's because you're sentimental.
Like
this is what happens when you're single long enough. You reset.
I am a very sentimental guy, actually. But yeah, those and once again, I like the big production ones, you know, where like the guy just goes full blown, you know, he's hired a band and they're all and like a group of singers and they're all hiding in the park disguised as normal people, and then out of nowhere it just becomes like a fucking Disney musical.
Have you ever seen the TV show Mobbed?
No. It's flash mobs?
Yeah, it's a TV show. It's got Howie Mandel on it, actually. And
really?
what they do is, for people's kind of special occasions like that, they organize giant themed flash mobs that start off as like hidden camera events.
Mm-hmm.
And then become these big elaborate, you know the type of thing, but the show is they organize different things like that. And some are really good. And some are really terrible.
You know, I kind of have, like, ever since the, like, advent of the flash mob, I've always kind of had a secret phobia of being caught in one.
The roles have flipped, my friend. Now you are the British person. Forever shall you be the nerdy podcast loser, while I will be the handsome Dairy Queen of America.
Okay, you just called yourself a queen. Well done.
I'm being you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind. You got a problem with the royal family?
Not as much as you do.
Well, that's true. But still...
But no, it's not like being caught in and being like, oh, wow, it's a flash mob. I'm always I'm nervous that if it would happen, I would somehow fuck it up for everyone. I'm like, oh, wow, it's a flash mob. And I accidentally, like...
Better. You're getting more British.
Well, seriously, you know how terrible you would feel if, like, oh, wow, it's a flash mob. And you accidentally trip over, like, the little girl who's going to, like, bust out in a solo or something and just blow everyone away. And it's like, wow, oh, shit, I'm sorry. And it's like, you knock her to the ground and it's like, well, the moment's gone. Flash mob ruined. We've only been practicing for this for, like, 3 months to get it perfect. And this cocksucker right here just showed up and fucked it all up, you know? Like, that's horrifying to me. That's just horrifying.
There used to be a show in Britain called Watch Out, Beadle's About, which was hosted by a man named Jeremy Beadle, who was the least funny family entertainer in the world. And
I've heard that name before.
He had a hidden camera show. Watch Out, Beadle's About was a hidden camera show, basically, where they would play pranks on ordinary members of the public. Yeah, we've all seen the type of show. Yeah. And I was watching it once with my dad, who hated that kind of thing. And it was some prank about going for a test drive, and then they drive the car through the window and smash it up, you know. But it turns out it's just a fake car and all that jazz, right?
Right.
And we were watching it. My dad says, if someone did that to me, I would strangle them. And then I said, oh, right, you mean like if someone managed to trick you and stuff? He's like, no. If that happened to me, really, I'd be very understanding. If someone... But if I knew it was... If I cottoned on it was a hidden camera trick, I would strangle them. So
your dad is actually a very was a very understanding person. He just had absolutely no time for TV show bullshit.
Right. Like, his thing was... his thing was that one day, that if someone came up and did that and got themselves punched in the face, that was buyer beware for that kind of show. Do you know what I mean? And there was...
Right.
There was, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And his attitude was that... His attitude was that if it happened in real life, it would be sad or a problem or worrying. But if it was a hidden camera trick, like, at that point, they were fair game. And he would just strangle them.
Now's my time.
Right. We're all just looking for an excuse. When the thin veneer of society is peeled back through the liberating lens of the hidden camera show, we see what man is really like when its atavistic nature is uncovered. Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of reminds me of something I heard about recently. There is a theme park in Japan. Because of course, Japan. That you can actually pay up front for the hero experience. Where if you pay up front sometime during your day, based on whatever scenario you chose, a fake crisis will happen where you are to save the day, right? And most of the time it's like, I imagine, guys are using this to, like, impress their girlfriends, right?
Right.
Like that has to be the only reason.
And 9 times out of 10, they just didn't do anything, and they were like, "Don't worry, something will come up. They'll sort it out."
Yeah. I paid for this, but you know what? Someone else will take care of this.
No, what I mean is, that's funny too. But what I mean is, the theme park was just like, well, don't worry about it. Someone always bumps into something. They'll just choose. They'll just decide what their crime is and stop it.
Well,
the theme park's found a really cost-effective way of policing its park, basically.
Well, my thought behind it is, so the guy knows what's up, right? Because he paid for it. Right? And I imagine it's probably fake enough where everyone's like, oh, okay, it's the hero thing. But what happens if you're the one guy who has that chromosome, where you fight, not flee, sort of thing, and you're not in on the joke, and you're not tricked by it?
What I want to know is, what happens the day a genuine hostage situation erupts in the park? Everybody down to the ground! It's alright, babe. I got this.
Like, no, I really don't think you do.
and just round the corner there's a guy going, "Bang, bang, I am here to rob you." What's all the commotion over there? Bang!
The hostage taker's like, shit, competition, take him out.
Oh, this is really realistic. This is hero experience is really worth the money.
That one guy's like, oh God, please!
There's
please,
dead everywhere.
He fucking shot me. Why are you guys just standing there?
I'm building up the suspense, man. I'm playing it cool.
Don't worry, I'll spring in any moment now. Right when she thinks that it's real. What are you talking? No, he really fucking hero experience bullshit.
Not again.
But seriously, like, what happens when the time comes that this happens, and the one guy is like, "Oh shit," and he like really does spring in the action, and like the actors are like, "Haha, I've taken your girlfriend, haha," and this guy just like, "Conceal carry, motherfucker, pop, pop, pop,"
Okay, in chat says we have concealed carry here. Not a great idea. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, that's why that can never work in the United States.
I've been reading up on this, and what I've learned is that the solution to all gun-related puzzles is more guns.
More guns, yeah.
What we need is sentient guns who can run around being guns on behalf of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they can have like the
guns.
bullets from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know? Just shuffle about helping people.
What you need is sentient guns that do not recognize good or evil. So in a moment of crisis, it just eliminates everybody.
Right.
You know?
Adams' law of bullets. Kill everyone. Yeah. No, I think that's working. Asimov's law of robotics. First, harm no human, and don't arrest an officer of OCP, and the pound shop. Asimov's law of robotics. No, I like that idea. I think that works. Theme parks with hero experience. But could you have other experiences, like on the budget end, if you wanted like a really authentic? Could you have girlfriend goes home with a more attractive man experience, or like sick on the rides, people you don't know laugh at you experience? Why do we limit it to just this one experience?
Well, I think there's definitely room for you had one too many soft pretzel bites, and now you kind of just hate everyone experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like the diarrhea on a roller coaster experience, you know? You walk around, someone...
Just hold it in for a little bit. Just one more loop. Just one more loop. Nope, there it goes. Well, we're going home, kids.
I can get behind that. Would you do that? Would you get a hero experience? Would you be so duplicitous?
No, fuck no. I think that actually really speaks to some of like the issues that like Japan's been facing recently.
Oh yeah,
I've heard about this a lot from a bunch of different sources, but Japan is having a really big problem with like birth rates, as in no one's having kids anymore over there, and one of the reasons is because
of the hero experience at theme parks.
No, it oddly enough, it is. A lot of people are attributing it to the work ethic over there.
That makes sense.
It's very, very common for a lot of guys to work like 80-hour weeks. It's just what they do.
Well, there was a guy. He was an American businessman who wrote a book and did a series of tours in the, I think it was the 70s actually, about how this is the ultimate way to run business, you know? And just about all of his theories and ideas on how this is the best way to run a business got discredited. But in Japan, he was huge, and he ended up, I wish I could remember his name. And he was a huge influence in Japan and how much they work, despite the fact that, yeah, everywhere else, people were like, no, fuck that, that's terrible.
Right, yeah, because it's been like this double-edged sword thing, because like the work rate over there is crazy. Like, they just work all the time, and then they couple it with the fact that the gender rate, I guess, there's way more men than there are women. Because like in America, I think it's like 51-49%. There's more women than men.
Right.
But over there, there's more men than women. And so what you get are the women basically kind of have the pick of the litter. and so they're able to be very, very selective about their partners because they can,
Right.
Just simple numbers. So what you're getting is a lot of these guys who are working all the time, don't have time for girlfriends, are now turning to like dating sims and stuff like that for that kind of experience, that girlfriend experience. So there's been a big issue with the concept of like masculinity over there. And no, I am not one of these, reign of kings, meninism bullshit sort of thing. But masculinity is a attribute that the women over there like. They do. It's been, in a lot of polls, a lot of, interviews, they say they like the classical, masculine man.
Well, Japan is interesting as a society because, and it's one of the most fascinating things about Japan. I'd love to go, except, well, I'd love to go all sorts of places. But one of the biggest problems they have, of course, is, they have this declining well, not declining necessarily, but they have this shrinking population growth issue, and yet they treat immigrants like second-class citizens. So it's not even like they can expand the population through immigration because they've got this. They have the Trump government essentially in Japan. They've had a really right-wing, creepy government for a long time. But one of the most interesting societal issues about Japan is they are really struggling to manage a really first-rate, world-class modern economy with a very traditionalist society. So, like, have you heard about this thing about basically these weird phony adoptions they do?
No.
So in Japan, companies are family-owned, right? That's how it works, right?
Right. Yeah.
Kawasaki is owned by the Kawasaki family, right?
Yeah,
but what happens
Zaibatsus,
when you don't have a lot of really great business-minded kids, right? And you've got to pass your company over to, a relative because businesses are family-owned, right? You can't hire in a top executive. They adopt people as adults. They hire people into the family. And so they do these late life adult adoptions where people become essentially honorary Kawasaki's, right? Or whatever the family name is. So really all you've done is hired a better person to take over the business, but it has maintained a family business because that person is your son now. And it blurs the line between business and family because these adoptions, they aren't in name only. You do join the family. But it's kind of like, it's almost like a business wedding. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Or even like those, like the weddings between nobles back in the day to ensure like peace treaties and territory rights.
And so it's this really odd thing because, really, the most logical explanation would be get rid of the tradition that involves. Do you know what I mean? You're not really passing it on to your children anymore, so the tradition is meaningless. But it's not in this. It's so important that that's how it's preserved.
Right. And it's one of those weird things too, where most of the modern world has figured out that there are traditions that you can hang on to, and there's traditions that need to be let go because A, they just don't have a place in society anymore, or B, they're actually kind of harmful.
Right.
And it seems like Japan is one of those places where they're just like, no, we're gonna hang on to everything,
Yeah, they are a very unusual society. But fascinating. And yet, at some places, there are some people in Japan who are incredibly modern in some respects. I mean, and of course they are, because they're living in the modern world. They don't exist in the past. They exist in the same. They have access to the same internet as the rest of us, and discourse and communication and stuff. But societally, They are strangely traditional. It's very strange.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
But yeah.
So what you been up to, man?
Well, I have been playing the guitar. That is what I've been doing. That's where my brain's at.
Yeah.
I play the guitar, as I'm sure I've mentioned. I will say right now, I have never been that great at it. I've been playing a long time, but I was never that amazing. But I've been playing Rocksmith, basically. And the reason I did this was, you might remember me saying on the podcast a little while ago that I was getting into Guitar Hero, which I'd never played before. We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was playing Guitar Hero, I realized something, which is that, firstly, it was bringing back feelings of playing the guitar, which I haven't really done since... Not extensively since I left university, really. I've had my guitar sitting here, and occasionally I'll pick it up and play, but I haven't really sat and played with the intention of learning and improving and stuff.
Right.
And it just brought a lot of stuff back, and it was also exercising my hands and getting my coordination up, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And we talked that episode about Rocksmith briefly. So I bought it. I bought Rocksmith, and I decided I was going to try that as a method to learn. For people who have not played Rocksmith before, it is a guitar learning method. We didn't cover this last week, did we? We didn't go into this. We were mostly talking about Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah, it was mostly Wonder Woman.
Rocksmith is it claims to be a guitar tuition program. As someone who has already learned to play the guitar, I wouldn't want Rocksmith as my only method. I think Ubisoft would like you to believe it is. Because they're selling it, you know, but I think it's better to... I think what I'd like is a combination of Rocksmith and a decent book, you know, not a beginner's book, but just a book that will take things like basic technique, and because what Rocksmith doesn't really do is doesn't go into great depth of, like, if you're pressing a note here and the fret's buzzing, you might want to switch your finger and move it further back here and then play it clean, you know. It does kind of just throw you straight into the game, but Rocksmith is a game where you plug in a guitar, uses a USB cable with a guitar end, basically, and it plays like Rock Band or Guitar Hero, but with real notes and a real tablature system, which is annoyingly inverted from standard tabs. So their system puts the sixth string on top, which makes sense if you've never played the guitar before. That is as sensible a way as the other way, because it just depends on which way you look at it. Mm-hmm. But I think had they done it the other way, it would have been no harder to understand for beginners and a hell of a lot easier to understand for people who already read tabs. So that was a little irritating. But I've been doing it, and I've been actually really impressed with it. I'm not a complete beginner, so I couldn't judge it from a complete beginner's perspective. But Rocksmith's done something which, in all my years of being a self-taught guitarist, I couldn't actually crack. Which is, when I learned to play the guitar, I learned chords. So I learned all my chords, and I learned how to do my bar chords in different positions, which means I can produce basically any chord I need to, I can do it, right? And with any chord you need to, you can play any song in a way, right? But what I was never any good at was actually learning guitar parts. Like, I could never learn solos, I could never memorize them, I couldn't get the repetition down. I could never,
It's got to play from the heart, man! It's got to play from the heart!
I wish. I could never learn leads, or, like, I could play chords, but I couldn't necessarily learn rhythm sections, you know? I wasn't that type of player. And I've been playing with it basically a week and a bit now, and I can play, you know the song Boys Don't Cry by The Cure?
Yes. Yeah.
I can play that pretty much note perfectly, start to finish, and that's not a particularly difficult song, but it's the first song I've actually ever been able to play note perfectly, start to finish, as recorded. I've never been able to do that before, so it's been quite fun. It's different to what I was expecting, and a lot of people online on guitar tuition message boards are very down on it. The main criticism being, well, the main criticism is it teaches you to hit notes in a way that the software will recognize in time. It doesn't teach you to sound good notes with good fingering technique, and that is true. But I think that's why
comes later.
I agree, but I think that's why pairing it with a book or just like an online site with some free lessons on, I think is the way to go. But it's kind of perfect for me because it's targeted so perfectly, like the one area that was holding back my playing completely. So I've been having a good time. I did break my guitar because the guitar I'm using right now, I had a very old 1980s metal style Super Strat years ago, and it broke because it was secondhand, and the shop I bought it from, I'd obviously not checked it, and it had a tremolo system that had cracked, and the first time I really put any weight on it, it just pulled it off the whole fucking assembly. It just ripped it from the body, which was great.
I want to see you in a metal band. That's what I want to see.
I would love that.
Just you looking like the lead singer of Judas Priest, because he's bald too. All leather, the rings, just maybe some eyeliner.
Yeah, I'd do it.
Oh yeah, I want to see that.
We'll take it up. But yeah, so I got a new guitar. I've been playing the guitar. I've been really enjoying it. And Rocksmith's good. I don't have that much else to say about it, but that is genuinely
either that,
all I've been doing all week.
Either that, or I want to see you dressed up as the lead singer of The Darkness.
Oh, God.
Just with that jumpsuit.
Boom.
Just listen to the rhythm of it.
First song I ever heard of theirs was
actually,
that...
they were better than people gave them credit for.
Oh, they're great. They're so cheesy, but they are really good. I liked their Christmas single. You got that one? Mm-hmm. Don't let the bells in. Because that is what Christmas music was over here for years. Rock bands doing stuff like that. Because we talked about this before, didn't we? Like, you guys don't have Slade and Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day and all those awesome Christmas songs that are the true meaning of Christmas.
Real quick, just to answer a question that was in the chat about Destiny. We do some co-op every once in a while. That does end up on Owen's channel. That's generally when that happens. Rick Defend.
Yes, it does.
Sorry to kind of slide that in there, but figured I'd get to it.
It has got me really loving playing music again. But other than that, I've kind of been a little bit of a shut-in this week. I've kind of had the house to myself. My girlfriend's been away visiting family, and she came back yesterday. So I've been...
I don't know. I barely pay attention to her anymore.
I've been... No, it's so... I know it sounds kind of crazy. It's because it's been so hot here, I've basically been crashed out. So I just don't know how long it's been. It's been so hot. I haven't done anything really worth mentioning except... No, I haven't. I'm going to be so boring this week. I've been playing the guitar and having a wonderful old time, learning to play The Cure and Oasis, that song I can never remember the name of.
Don't Look Back in Anger.
That's the one. That one. It's a good song.
I was actually going to say, come talk to me when you can play that note for note.
It's a good song, though. I like that song. I like Oasis.
I remember hearing someone... Because I've always been one of those people who... I never played guitar. I've never been particularly musically inclined. I was in band. I played the trumpet.
Never stops being funny.
But I have been fortunate enough to be acquaintances with a lot of musicians. I mean, no one big or anything like that, but people who can play competently. And I remember one time I mentioned to one of them, like, hey, it'd be really cool if you could play this Oasis song. And the response I got was just like dumbfoundedness. Like, the person just looked at me like with aghast. I was like, what? And apparently, according to him, trying to emulate Noel Gallagher is incredibly difficult.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I guess from what he said, I mean, he said a lot of things that I didn't quite understand because it was all a lot of musical terminology that I didn't get. But I guess he plays the guitar very awkwardly.
Huh.
I don't know.
Either that, or he was a really terrible guitar player and didn't want to let on. It's like, oh, yeah. No, the flux capacitor on Noel's guitar is tuned to the vibrations of Saturn, and
and I'm a Pisces, so clearly I can't play that.
No, I don't know. I've never heard that before. Like, I will say this, right? I like Oasis. I actually think Oasis are really good. And underrated, even though they're beloved. But I've never really known much about them except their songs. So, like, I couldn't tell you anything about Noel Gallagher as a guitarist. Not even a little bit.
All I know about Oasis is, one, I do really like Oasis. Especially those first 3 albums. And then, of course, you know, the history of the brothers. Well,
that's
fighting.
The best bit about Oasis.
Oh, yeah. Like,
if they didn't hate each other, they wouldn't be half as interesting.
You know, and, like, you just don't get rock like that anymore, do you?
No.
Like,
even then, you didn't get it anymore. Because things had changed. Like, if that had happened in the 70s, you're like, oh, they're a band and they hate each other. You'd be like, okay, got that. In the 90s, oh, they're a band, they're brothers, and they hate each other. You were like, really? Why can't they just get along?
Right. Because, like when the 90s came, it was no longer this band's feuding. It's, the lead singer killed themselves. You know?
Right.
They really stepped up the game. Like,
the lead singer's girlfriend killed him. Not saying nothing! I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. That is not a conspiracy theory I personally believe. That's what we call in the trade a joke.
In the trade?
the podcast trade.
Right.
What kind of trade you thinking of?
You know, that one.
Oh, God.
What? I said that one. Like, the podcast trade.
Yeah.
Freak.
Yeah, I believe you. Okay, so here's a question, right? In the 90s, Oasis were one group, and they had that song, na 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 na, that everybody loves. That's what it was called, right? Na 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 na. Yeah. No, I know what it's called. That was a joke. Again, in the trade. And they had Wonderwall, which is a damn good song. Damn good song. Mm-hmm. But did you know... I want to know, because I want to know how well this carried across to America. They, like, what they were most known for was their rivalry with
Blur.
With Blur. Did that go across in the States in the same way?
No, because Blur was kind of a non-existent thing over here.
That's what I'm asking.
Blur never really caught on here.
So were there any Blur songs? Do you know a Blur song? Any Blur songs you know?
Was it Song 42 or some
Song
shit like
2.
that?
Woo!
Yeah.
Doom, doom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom,
And the only reason that caught on is because it was in the
Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
same here.
Commercial.
And it's dumb as well, because, like, that song is not them at all. Like, I feel like that must be a fucking albatross around their neck, you know? Every time they go, woohoo! Oh, fuck you! Fuck you! No, shut up! Get off the off the bus.
It's kind of like everyone points to, like, Creep as being kind of like the outlier for Radiohead, and, like, they themselves don't even like playing that song anymore.
Right.
But what I imagine is probably more of a weird thing for them as a band is the whole Honey Pablo album.
Yeah.
Because that album, like, doesn't sound anything like any of their other, like, albums. Like, if you would listen to Honey Pablo and then turn around and listen to, like, Kid A or Paranoid or OK Computer, no. Like, you're gonna be like,
See,
what?
I can only participate in this song earnestly to a certain extent because I will say this, and I will wait for the hate mail to come in. There is only one Radiohead song I care for, and it is not one of their most Radioheady ones.
Okay.
Oh, you want to know what it is? Sure,
Yeah.
Would be a follow-up question. No, I like High and Dry a lot.
Yeah, oh, that's a good song.
And I think the rest of their work is overproduced, pretentious shit.
Yeah. It's actually really funny. I still read Rolling Stone from time to time because somehow I got signed up for a subscription.
It's the only one of your magazines that's not covered in moss. Sorry, I just like the idea of you live in a lichen-covered cave with no reading material except Rolling Stone. That'd be pretty amazing. We go. No, carry on.
But one of the most recent albums or issues was, I guess it was 20 years. It's the 20-year anniversary of OK Computer, which is like their seminal hit or their album that everyone loves. And but they were talking to the lead singer. I can't think of his name right now. What the fuck was his name? Quick, chat. Who's the lead singer of Radiohead? Tell me, quick.
All I know is he called Scott Tenorman a loser that time.
Come on. Come on.
They're not getting to us. They're not going to have it, John.
Anyways.
I just Google it.
They were... You failed me, chat. Failed me. But they were talking to him, and they're like, you know...
Tom York.
What would you... Tom York, okay. And, they ask him the question, you're like, oh, what would you say to yourself, you know, from 20 years ago? And I actually really appreciated his response. And his response was, lighten the fuck up. And I love that. I love that kind of response.
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if it was like, so what would you say to yourself for 20 years ago? Tom, there is a drawer in the house that you're going to move to 3 years from now. There's a key under the mattress. Approximately 2 years after you move in, a man will come to the house and ask for that key. You won't know him. You won't get a good look at his face. He'll come in the middle of the night. Only you will see him. Get a picture. Get a photo. And whatever you do, don't give him the key. The interviewer's like, I almost feel we've got space to print this. You'll fucking print it. I want to know where this Rolling Stone time machine is. All right, Tom, now the next most important thing is, once you see the man, make sure he doesn't leave with the key, but don't let him know you're onto him. You're going to need to travel to a gas station somewhere down the M52, approximately 6 miles south of the recording studio which you first cut the first record on. On that road, there'll be a small diner with a green dumpster in the back. It'll be illuminated. Now, I went there a few years after you, but if you can get there first, there still might be time. Take the key, slip it under the bottom of the dumpster, and knock on the door 3 times. This is all I've got, man.
An orange tabby cat will follow you the entire way. Do not acknowledge the tabby cat. If you do, all is lost. What you're gonna want to do is, before you acknowledge the cat, find the woman in the blue dress. Repeat after me. Find the woman in the blue dress. She has the answers. She will acknowledge the cat first. Then you know you are safe.
The guys just write it up. When it comes out, it's like a 40-page article, and it's printed like rock and roll interviews always are, like in the really thin columns, tiny print, shitty paper. It just goes, page after page, and every so often it's got like a glamour shot of him like holding a keyboard, and then there's a section and it'll be in slightly bigger font and in italics, like with an abbreviated version of the quote, and it just says, "Do not acknowledge the cat, Tom York, 2017."
It's like, yeah. They go through the whole interview, and he lays out the whole spiel. They print it. So what would you say to yourself 20 years? Lighten the fuck up.
No! You betrayed me, Rolling Stone!
You know not what you've wrought.
3 years from now, the writer from Rolling Stone's alone on a train. It all goes dark. Time seems to stop, and Tom York comes out carrying a katana with a scar over his eye. Save the cheerleader, save the world. But first you must die. Print the article.
The train goes dark. One light comes down in the middle. Orange tabby cat sitting there. Oh shit.
Who are you? I'm a creep. I'm a loser.
I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here?
He's like, well, if you're gonna sing that, I'm not gonna listen.
You know what my favorite thing that was ever done with that song? Do you remember the Dick Cheney video?
No.
There is a hilarious video, and I'm not going to take the time to find it now, but it was a video from a press conference, right? And it was George W. Bush talking, but then someone noticed that in the background, like behind a tree, just leering, is Dick Cheney. So someone like reversed the tape of like there's like a zoom in on him and then a zoom out, and they slow it down, and the whole time they're just playing Creep.
Creep was one of my the songs of one of my favorite online like MP3 hoaxes, because people, if you weren't around for the Napster days, it might be worth like there was a time when the entire internet believed that Guns N' Roses wrote Every Rose Has Its Thorn, just because that's how well MP3s were labeled back in those days. Like, and it was so common to get fakes, but people would release hoaxes deliberately to catch on like this. And one of the best ones was someone released a sound-alike Bob Dylan cover of Creep, basically. and it went around as genuine for years, but it was really good. Really, really well done.
I
hate that song.
Here.
Best Bob Dylan video I ever saw was someone doing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, very, very shiny nose.
The one I always remember from the Napster and BearShare and LimeWire days was, I don't know where this came about and why it became so goddamn prevalent, but do you guys remember the Killers song When You Were Young?
No.
It was one that... Huh?
I don't. I don't know that song.
Yeah. How's it go? He looks nothing like Jesus, but he talks like a gentleman. Like, you remember when you were young.
Right.
Anyways, that song came out, and apparently, like, the first versions of it were rips from a radio station. And radio stations had a really bad habit, and I wonder if it was an anti-piracy thing, but they would, like, insert their name of the station, like, into the song as it was playing. And so there's a version of this song that I swear everyone had, where it would play the song, and out of nowhere you just hear K-Rock, and it would do that like 3 or 4 times throughout the song.
And then, right, you try and listen to the song without it, and it's written in your brain that it goes there.
To this day, I can hear that song without knowing exactly when the K-Rock is supposed to happen, and being kind of sad that I'm not hearing it, you know? Like, there'll be times where I'll hear that song by myself, like, driving the car, and just real quietly be like, K-Rock. You know?
Napster was also, like, because we were talking about Weird Al earlier, Napster was kind of responsible for Weird Al Yankovic getting the credit for every parody song ever written.
Right. Yeah. There's, like, the beer one.
Yeah, some of them parody songs. They were just funny songs. Weird Al. Here's the other person doing funny songs.
That or the Jerky Boys being credited for every, like, phone prank ever.
Yeah. Back in the day, the early days of file sharing.
Oh.
There's a Reddit community. And I will freely admit I was perusing this for nostalgia, not for titillation.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely, because it was entertaining to see. There's a Reddit community of porn from the old file sharing days. So it's like it is very much like encountering very private parts of your childhood again.
Right, like, oh, I remember that one.
Right. It's kind of weird. I say childhood. You know what I mean? Teen years. It's a weird, like, run to the past. And you're like, what this? And you see stuff you'd completely forgotten about. You're like, wow, like I never thought I'd see that again. Also, tugs on the old heartstrings, bringing it back to me.
Yeah, it tugs on the old heartstrings while I'm tugging on the old
banjo string. It's just weird to know that there's all that stuff's still out there, you know?
Mm-hmm. But actually, to kind of follow up on your guitar playing thing, like I said, like, I don't play guitar. I don't know how to play guitar. I know the trumpet, and that's about it. But I have
the trumpet, man's coolest instrument.
You damn right.
I just like it whenever we get a little role reversal. Now I am the one who plays guitar, and you are in the school band.
Just remember, okay, Miles Davis played the trumpet.
Just remember, you're not Miles Davis.
Yet.
Any day now. Do you still have your trumpet? Did we discuss this before?
No, I don't. But what I was going to say is that I've actually screwed around with a harmonica.
I love the harmonica. So much fun.
And I have learned a handful of, like, little ditties to play on it. And but what's great about the harmonica is that, one, there's no bad notes, right? That's kind of one of the things about harmonica. As long as you're playing in the right key, as everyone else, you can't fuck it up. You can't fuck up a note. If you blow on that thing, whatever hole you're blowing into will play the note correctly. All right?
Right.
And which makes it really great for, like, jamming. Which is, you know, I mean, yeah, like, people have utilized the harmonica for, much more intricate things, like the Blues Travelers and the whole Chess Records era and stuff like that. But the real joy of the harmonica is actually just improv.
See, that to me is not the real joy of the harmonica.
To me, it is.
For me, the real joy of the harmonica is it's the only community in the world united in a loathing of Bob Dylan. And I think that's wonderful. Like, you haven't seen true anger until you've seen a harmonica player react to the suggestion that Bob Dylan is the world's most famous harmonica player.
Or Neil Young.
Well, for people who don't play the harmonica, it's worth mentioning Bob Dylan is not a good harmonica player.
No, and in fact, like all those folk songs that utilize a harmonica, where it's it's strapped to their chest with that weird
Right.
Inquisition looking fucking
Did
device.
I ever tell you about the day I bought one of those? I'll give you the story afterwards. It's kind of funny. It's only short, but I'll tell you afterwards.
But yeah, like none of that's good. Like harmonica playing,
No.
it's good as what it works as is an additional sound to the
Right.
song, and that's kind of what it's there for. Is just like to kind of break up the monotony of either A, just the voice, or B, just the guitar.
So I'm going to tell you about the time I bought this. So those things, I went to buy one, and I went to specifically a folk music store. And so here's the thing. It can be very difficult buying things in music if you don't know what they're called, right?
Did they kick you out because you didn't have a floppy hat on?
Not quite. It's like, for example, have you ever tried... You know what a capo is, right? Or a cape. Some people call them capos, right? You know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
For people who don't, it's a little device you put over a guitar neck, and it nuts the strings there, basically, so that you can play open chords in a higher key.
Nuts.
Fair enough. But it's got kind of an odd name, like capo, right? And the thing that's colloquially known as a whammy bar is called a tremolo arm, right? It's fair. They all have these weird, like, usually Italian names, right?
Right.
Well, they're probably Latin names, aren't they, rather than Italian? But you know what I mean. They all have these... Everything musical has these stupid names, right? So you go in and you try and talk about it, and you look like an idiot, and you don't know. So I went in, and I said... And I didn't know what they were called, right? And I assumed they... Anyway, so I go into this music shop, and I'm like, I'm trying to buy...
the harmonica holder.
I'm trying to buy one of those things that clips a harmonica to the front of your face while you're playing the guitar. And he went, oh, a harmonica holder. And he gets it out for me, right? He goes and finds them. They've got them, and they come in these big... You know when they just package something in plastic and staple a piece of cardboard over the top? You know, like they must be making them out of the back of the shop. And the cardboard's got a big name at the front, and it says, Folky Harmonica Holder. And the brand is literally called Folky. And I'm like, it's literally just... I made a tit of myself, and it's actually called a harmonica holder. Like, that's the name. That's the best name we got.
You look up the Italian pronunciation for harmonica and holder.
It's exactly the same.
It's L harmonica holder.
Harmonicky holdy.
Harmonica O holder O.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Harmonica fusilli. There we go.
Harmonica Vajul.
Harmonica ragu. Yeah, so I bought one of those.
Do you have a harmonica cacciatore?
And I'll tell you right now, right? This is Bob Dylan's also greatest strength. He makes those things look fucking comfortable to use. I felt like I was... You know what it always looks like when... Imagine... Imagine you're Roadrunner and you're trying to eat that bird seed, but every time you reach your head towards the seed, the road moves further away. That's what it's like trying to play with those fucking things. And on top of that, mine, like, the screws got a little loose, so every time I'd, like, get into a solo, it would fall forwards. And one time, I had it mic'd up, and I was trying to rehearse for a thing. I was gonna try and go to an open mic night, and I had it mic'd up, and it fell forward. It fell forward at such speed that air went through it backwards, and it went... It was great. I was terrible when I played guitar. I spent so much more time buying useless, shitty gear than I did learning to play. I bought one of those things... Have you ever heard... Gosh, you will have heard this. But you know Sweet Emotion? With the full intro? Mm-hmm. I bought one of those I've still got that talkbox pedal. It's in my cellar somewhere. And it combines surgical tubing with a mic.
Right.
And it plays music down the surgical tubing, then mics up your mouth. Basically, that's how it's supposed to work. Which is absurd. Never fucking worked. Like, it worked for about 3 weeks, and I couldn't play the damn thing. I couldn't play the guitar, but I just used to sit there playing cards, going, wow, wow, and saying dirty words. It was great fun.
But yeah, so I've been kind of tooling around with the harmonica again, and just I've actually been thinking about maybe trying to learn guitar.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What's putting you off?
Just going and buying one, really.
I think I say this as someone who plays guitar and has always really enjoyed it. I think you'd really like it.
The thing is, like, I don't really have any, because I want to learn guitar right now for some very specific reasons.
It won't get you laid. I'm sorry, that's a myth.
We'll see. All right.
You hit him over the head with your guitar and then carry him into the back of a van. I would say that went to a dark place, but I'm just trying to be accurate to your life.
I'm gonna say, like, having a T-shirt with Courage the Cowardly Dog on it has gotten me laid in the past. So, you know what? The guitar
right, and that's a dog that looks like a pig.
All right.
It was probably really, really, really pity-based, right? Like, oh,
I'm okay with that.
Someone let this little guy in his kid's cartoon T-shirt out of the way of his helper. I better look after him. Bow chicka wow wow.
I'm okay with that.
Well, you would have to be.
This is a bad thing for me.
Hey, it's off. What's going on?
But no, like, I honestly have no desire to learn, like, the electric guitar or anything like that. I specifically want to learn, you know, on an acoustic guitar and play the acoustic guitar.
Sorry, my cat's hassling me. How come?
Because those are the kind of songs I like. Honestly. You know,
that's cool.
Not to bring up Bob Dylan again, but I would love to learn how to play Boots of Spanish Leather. I love that song.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all the same instrument, functionally.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't have the desire to buy the gear for an electric guitar. Like, I don't want to buy an amp. I don't want to have it stored in my house anywhere. Like, I can handle an acoustic guitar. I can kind of just throw that in the closet when I'm done with it.
Right, like my amp, which is a nice amp. I mean, it's only a little practice amp, but my amp has been holding open a fire door for the past 3 years. I don't use it. At the moment, I'm using Rocksmith for an amp, but even before that, I had a 1/2" to 3.5 millimeter jack adapter, and I used to just plug my guitar into my computer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because who can be bothered with, like, the long cable and the... And if I can practice with headphones, that's what I want to do, you know? Ideally. Aside from anything, it doesn't sound like shit. Cheap amps usually do. But, no. No, well, I mean, the acoustic's awesome. I like acoustic guitar. You still there? You've gone all quiet.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Good. I'm so used to me interrupting, I just assume you would interrupt as well.
No, because I'm not an asshole.
No, I like the acoustic guitar. They are... I am into my heavy rock music when it comes to playing guitar. That's why I like to play. More than what it's like to, what I like to listen to, it's why I like to play. But I got the acoustic guitar, funnily enough. And there are some things for which only an acoustic guitar will do, you know? There are some songs where you just you want that acoustic guitar sound. But I actually got mine because they use a significantly heavier gauge string. And so learning things and practicing on the acoustic guitar when you intend to play the electric is a little bit like doing martial arts training in weighted clothes, you know?
Okay.
It makes your electric guitar feel like butter, basically. Mm-hmm. But not in the Marlon Brando sense, so just don't. I've tried that. It's not good. Not good for you. It's not good for the guitar.
Yeah, smothering your guitar in Marlon Brando is never a good idea.
I'm kind of the opinion, however, that I think beginners should begin with the electric guitar. And the reason I think this,
mouth. No.
the reason I think this is because you don't actually need an amp to learn to play the electric guitar for the most part. Like you can hear it fine, you know. They're actually cheaper than acoustics usually for good ones. Very cheap acoustics aren't that good normally, but a cheap electric's pretty good. But they're also much, much, much more physically comfortable to learn. And that physical comfort will make a lot of difference down the line. Because the thing about guitar is, like, unfortunately, like it's the most popular. It's one of the most popular instruments of the modern era, right? And it's one of the most well, the cat just fell off the table and knocked everything off. Well done. It's one of the most physically uncomfortable instruments to learn to play in terms of your fingertips.
Right.
I do not miss those early days.
And I know that it wouldn't be like one of those things like, oh yeah, I learned how to play guitar and now I'm immediately gonna be able to do this. But I also have a very deep abiding love for like Spanish guitar playing.
And the nice thing about those is because they use nylon strings, they don't need any like neck reinforcement, so they tend to be very cheap actually. That they are guitars you can get very cheap and sound nice. Nylon guitars. Beautiful. That was my first guitar, a nylon guitar. It was £30.
Because there's what's the name of that song? Granada. Granada from the I can't remember what it's called, but it's a specific suite. I cannot remember the name of the bigger piece that comes from, but the song is called Granada. Yeah, but it's a part of a bigger piece.
They're more
song.
versatile.
It was
than...
in a soundtrack. Vicky Cristina Barcelona. It was from there.
I think I know the one you mean. They're more versatile than people think as well, because Willie Nelson does all his guitar work on a Spanish guitar. Trigger.
Yeah.
It's called.
Yep, Trigger.
It's a beautiful sounding guitar he's got.
Yeah, but if you actually really looked at that guitar,
it's a piece of shit. It's on its last. I mean, it's not a piece of shit, but it's on its last legs.
Yeah, like surely that thing is going to be destroyed soon enough. Like,
yeah.
Although Willie Nelson most likely will die before that. Be honest.
Well, it's probably like a Blue Peter dog situation where there's been like 5 or 6 by now. You will not know what Blue Peter is, will you?
Nope.
Blue Peter is a children's television program. It's called Blue Peter because that's the name of a certain type of naval flag. I don't remember the exact story. It's something like that. There's a type of flag called the Blue Peter. It's named after that. And it's a children's... It's been around since the 60s, 50s probably, and it's a children... But the best way to describe it is it's like a children's educational magazine program, you know? So it's educational items that they visit things, they do projects, I guess. It's very weird. Like, I can't describe it very well because I've often been of the opinion that it is the most boring television show devised by mankind.
So yeah, let's bring it up during our podcast. Well done.
But the famous story is they one year announced that they were going to... They had pets on the set. That was the idea. They would have dogs that people would get to know. They would live in the set and have a little garden area and trained and live in the set, and then they would be on every episode. So they would always have a couple of dogs and a couple of cats and things like that, different animals. And the really famous story is that they introduced the new set of animals that were coming in, and the dog died.
The other ones?
The dog died the week after they introduced it.
Ooh.
And so they didn't tell anyone, and they replaced it the next week. And that came out years later and led to like a mass cultural betrayal. That it was not the dog they'd been told there'd been 2. Which is kind of funny.
Really? Of all the things to be upset about, it's like, oh, it's not the same little Pomeranian or whatever the fuck it was.
It would be great. Because Pomeranians, they don't train up that well, do they? So it'd be just yipping all the time. Like like, so what's going on in the Blue Peter craft table? Yep. Someone walks past the television studio. Yep.
All right,
Shut up.
Kill that fucking dog.
Shut up. No, I think it was a border collie.
In the middle of taping, just shut the fuck up, you goddamn mutt! Shut up! Just shut up! And the host of Blue Peter has been let go today.
Well, that has happened. Richard Bacon came out that he went on a cocaine-fueled bender. And then he got sacked. And then because Blue Peter's always been like this educational show about honesty and upfrontness, and it was in all the papers, the rest of his TV presenter friends, who at this time, they were all like young in their 20s, you know, had to go on and explain to the kids why he'd been let go. In the most awkward, humiliating way. It was great.
Well, it was like over here we had Blue's Clues,
Right?
and there was all these rumors about what happened to the original host, Steve, because like it seemed like out of nowhere, like, hey everyone, there's a new host coming, Joe, and
everyone's like, what WTF is this?
Well, and they actually had an episode where, you know, Steve was leaving, which was super weird because the premise of the show was that it was his house, his dog, you know, everything like that, and out of nowhere, like, oh yeah, Steve's going off to college, and while he's gone, his friend Joe is going to be living in his house and taking care of his dog.
Steve came back and he's like, so, how's Blue? And Blue's just cowering in the corner. He's a lot thinner than he used to be. There's a rolled up newspaper, feces on the carpet. He's living in a cage, you know, like,
oh, Blue's doing just fine. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we're not doing any fucking clues today either. You just tell me what I need to know. Son of a bitch. Flea-ridden little cartoon.
Like, oh yeah, you put your paw print on shit. You know what I call that? I call that making a fucking mess, not a goddamn game. And why the fuck are the salt and pepper shakers talking to me?
You put something in this. Put something in this, you fucking mutt.
You trying to fucking poison me or some shit like that? Huh? You gonna get rid of me that fucking easily? I'm on to you.
Steve comes back next time. Like the neighbor tells him Blue's been chained outside for 6 months. Today we're going to solve a mystery to find out if Blue's being fed.
There's just a big blue paw print on a big sign that says no.
It's like, well, it's not conclusive. They just turn around and the dog's dead. Like, what are you trying to tell us, Blue?
Like, we'll put it in our handy dandy notebook. What other clues do we have? And it's just like
flies buzzing around,
like resting on its eyeballs.
Mommy, I don't like this episode.
I don't understand. The whole episode, Blue's trying desperately to tell Steve that he's been roped into a legal dogfighting ring. Hey boy, how's it going, Blue?
Paw prints on betting slips.
Big poster of Michael Vick, just a paw print. I don't seem to understand.
Also, the locks have all changed on my house. What's...
Oh, the mail's here. Hello, mailbox. Good God, Steve.
Run!
You don't know, man. You don't fucking know.
Leave.
This shit's gone bad.
What are you trying to tell me, mailbox? Why aren't you listening? Why aren't you getting out of here? The door opens. It's that little doll from Saw. Run, Steve!
Save yourself!
Gets
Go
inside.
back to college.
Wakes up, chained to a torture device while a video. Hello, Steve. Would you like to play a game? Inside this cartoon
games.
dog,
Is it Blue's Clues?
inside this cartoon dog, I've sewn 5 keys.
Next to you, is a box of toothpicks. You have 2 hours to carve the keys out of the dog with the toothpicks.
Without killing the dog.
Well, Blue's Clues do. We can too. Oh, this got dark. What I was gonna say is that
We can't go back from this, John. The whole show's changed. I'm not happy about it. I don't like myself. And I don't think I'm sleeping tonight, man. We've gone too far. We've gone too far. There's no coming back from here.
I feel fine.
We killed the mailbox.
Here's the mail, it never fails, it makes me want to...
Next door, there's a sound of a wild animal in a big blue house, and Shadow's like, you don't even want to know what's going on over here.
It's no longer bear in the big blue house, it's bearskin rug in a big blue house.
Man walking around with an axe. Where is Shadow?
Get the fuck out, man. Get the fuck out.
PBS is not what it used to be.
Trump only decided to give us funding if we made these changes.
These are gonna be the most horrific changes. Have you seen this? Have you seen this video go around of Trump not understanding a metaphor?
No, I can imagine.
So he's being interviewed, and he's being interviewed in the Oval Office, and the guy says to him, "So someone asked George W. Bush why the Oval Office was, oval shaped, round all the way," and he says, it was like that because it means there are no corners to hide in. And Trump says, well, yeah, I mean, it's very true. I mean, if you look around, I've looked out of the windows and they can see right in. I mean, I don't often see anybody out there, but they can...
Jesus Christ.
They can look right in at you.
Oh.
It's pretty great. Solid leader you got there.
Yeah, well, how's the terrorist sympathizer doing on your side of things?
Well, we had a terrible fire in London that's turning out to be a major political scandal because it turns out, well, it's not funny, I'm not laughing at it because of that, but it turns out the reason it was so bad, it's looking like the death toll is going to get to the hundreds, is because it's social housing that wasn't subjected to the same safety regulations as the buildings rich people live in. And the opposition party attempted to pass a bill updating housing standards, and the government she was in prior to this one refused. And they've basically been doing nothing, and the thing is, it's not entirely her fault, although it's certainly the result of deregulation, but it's come just after the election when she's already in the most unbelievably weak position. So yesterday, while she crossed the road, a crowd of people shouted "coward" at her. It's not going great for her at the moment, to be honest.
No. It doesn't sound like it.
What really turned the tide is the Murdoch papers have now turned on her. And when you lose the Rupert Murdoch papers, you lose British politics.
Right.
nobody has won an election in this country without the backing of the Murdoch press since the 1950s. So
that's kind of sad too.
oh well, I mean that's one of the biggest issues with British politics right now. One of the funniest things is, and this to me this sums up everything that's wrong and peculiar about British politics. To form a government, you have to go to the Queen and ask permission to form a government, right? And that's usually done by who has the most seats in the House. And then the Queen gives what's called a Queen's speech on behalf of the government, and then Parliament has to vote for that speech and say, we support this agenda, right? And that's why you need a majority, because you need a majority to vote for that speech and secure the government, basically. It's complicated, stupid electoral stuff from an ancient system. But the government gives the speech to the Queen to read. And they have delayed the Queen's speech for the first time in British history. It has never happened before. And the excuse they gave was, when when the Queen reads a speech, it has to be written up on vellum, which is a special type of paper made from goat skin that lasts a really long time. But the only reason we use it is because it's like ancient, traditional British government special paper, right? The Queen can't read from normal, ridiculous wood paper for her special occasion. It's got to be vellum. Anyway, and they were like,
a fucking tablet and be done with it.
Right, and then they were like, and it takes longer to dry, so, and we've got a vellum shortage. But everyone was like, but the Queen normally reads it from paper and then they write it up on vellum afterwards. So clearly, like, they were just trying to delay. And then what she's put in the Queen's speech, what she's put in the speech is, we're not going to do a speech next year. We're just going to skip that because we're going to be really busy. So she's put in the Queen's speech that she's having to go to this other party to get support for. That, by the way, I'm not doing this next year. So good luck getting rid of me. It's pretty funny and also terrifying.
Like, at what point does the Queen go, what the fuck? You want me to read this? Like,
yeah. It is. Did you see did I tell you someone in an interview asked her what the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was?
With the Queen or Theresa May?
Theresa May. She said...
I'm actually more interested in what the naughty things that the Queen's done.
Well, the Queen doesn't give interviews. Never has, so...
Lame.
But, just before the election, someone asked this interview and saying, like, what's the naughtiest thing you've ever done? And she went, oh my, well, none of us are perfectly well-behaved all the time. And then she seemed to think about it a bit, and she went, certainly, when I was a child, running through the fields of wheat didn't please the farmers very much.
Oh my god.
And everyone was like, what? Where did she grow up? Narnia?
Like, where are there fields of wheat in England?
Right, like, I'm sure they exist, but, like, Theresa May's not that old. Like, when she didn't grow up... We're not talking about Jude the Obscure here. Thomas Hardy, Victorian... rural poverty novels, like, where was she?
You talking about Bane?
Bane? What?
You said Thomas Hardy, so.
Yes, I did, but Thomas Hardy is also the name of an author. You know that. Shut up.
Max?
Shut up. The best response I saw from that, was someone on Twitter saying, journalists seeking any farm owners in 1940s who suffered from damage to wheat fields.
We found the culprit. We finally found her. She's the Prime Minister.
Someone pointed out, though, that this was also around the time of the first crop circle sightings, which I thought was pretty great. Like...
No, I think my favorite thing lately in American politics is Trump's lawyer hired a lawyer.
Yeah. I'm gonna need this.
Like, they're like, why? Oh, no reason. I just figured it'd be a good idea to have it on retainer. Like, but why?
Well, he knows something's coming up. They're all going down for this.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. The entirety of the administration has hired lawyers. And there's been lawyers who...
Did this information come from a file marked Preparations for Nuremberg 2?
But it's like, there's been... Well, what's funny is that Trump's lawyer, his normal lawyer, actually doesn't have a license to practice law in Washington.
That's great.
Because, like, I imagine it's probably similar over there, but we have the Bar Association over here. And lawyers have to pass a bar exam, and then they are licensed to practice law in that state. And if they want to practice anywhere else, they have to take another bar exam.
Right.
In the other state.
We don't have that here because obviously we're a smaller country, so we don't have massively rarefied laws. Although it wouldn't surprise me if you might have to take it again for Scottish law, but I wouldn't be surprised if you only just have to like do a specialism, you know.
Just have to take a quick Scantron.
We have to do some stupid things though. Like, do you know that there are 2 levels of lawyer here? Do you know that?
There's I did know about this, actually. I just can't remember what they're called.
Solicitors and barristers.
Yeah.
And your solicitor is like your general legal counsel. You'll go to a solicitor, like, if you have a legal problem, that'll be your first point of call. And then your barrister is basically, you're on trial for murder, you need a barrister. do you know what I mean? Like, the distinctions are more technical in that. And becoming a solicitor is not that different to becoming a lawyer in the States. But to become a barrister, you have to go to dinner at a special fancy club 3 times over a certain period of time. And if you don't, you have to find the time. You have to go to the club and have the dinner. Like, there's a ceremony involved that involves going to have dinner at a very expensive restaurant. The same one at a club. It's absurd. And most people don't even know that because the British law is so obtuse and stupid. Ugh. That's one of the things I hate about Britain. It's all this archaic tradition that gets in the way of actual running of the country.
Well, it's like over here we have all these issues because there's like 3 levels of law. There's the local municipality laws, you know, so basically like, hey, this town says that you can't play music after, you know, midnight. So if you get caught doing that, you get like a town ordinance violation, right? And then there's the state law, which is, you know, like, okay, these are the laws of the state. In these certain situations, this is how we will act. And then there's a 3rd level of federal law, where it's a unified system where if the offense is bad enough, it goes to federal law, and then, you know, everyone's supposed to adhere to that. And it's supposed to be, it's kind of like a Trump system, you know, not Donald Trump, but like, you know, if, you know, a state law, you know, like a town can't legalize murder, right? Because the state has outlawed murder, and so has the federal level, you know. So it's one of those things where, like, that's where like the issues come in with like the marijuana laws, like Colorado and Washington and now California, I guess. They have now legalized recreational marijuana, which they are basically saying, like, on a state level, we will not prosecute you. But marijuana is still a class 1 narcotic on the federal level. So a federal law agency could theoretically go into Colorado or all these other countries and arrest everyone who is smoking weed.
What movie is it where... it might be MASH, it might be... It's one of those movies from that kind of era, but it might be a more serious one, like Full Metal
Easy
Jacket
Rider.
or Platoon, where you see the guys out at war, and then the news comes over the tannoy that marijuana's been criminalized, and just and they've got to turn it in, and a mass call of just shit comes out, and they'll have to start turning it in. And it was people finding out in real time that it had been criminalized. Oh, that was kind of interesting. I remember that image when I think about it. Well, it's an interesting one because marijuana, like the move to criminalize it was pushed by the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
Lobbied very heavily for it. I have mixed feelings on this issue because I am not a user. I will say I have partaken in the past, mostly out of curiosity. I'm not a chronic user of any sort of substance. You know what I mean? Aside from anything, like I do not have the patience to find a drug dealer. Like if they were readily available, like maybe I would fall victim to it. But like, would you even know where to buy drugs? Because I genuinely wouldn't. I wouldn't know where to get some if I wanted to. But I've always been broadly in favor of legalization because my argument's always been that it was criminalized for the wrong reasons. But I did hear the argument made recently that with the societal problems caused by tobacco and alcohol that are too ingrained in our society to remove, would you want to add another, And I kind of have some sympathy for that point of view. Do you know what I mean?
Here's my problem with that thing is, a lot of the problems that we have with the alcohol tobacco industries, a lot of have to do with marketing, right? Marketing to children and making products that are appealing to them, right? A lot of that's already been kind of eliminated.
Right.
Tobacco industries, they can't even have magazine ads anymore. They can't have TV commercials.
Yeah.
There's actually very few places that like tobacco companies can advertise anymore.
Right, and it's becoming more popular to prohibit smoking in certain, but like here you can't smoke in bars anymore. Like the smoking in businesses is done here. And the evidence, a lot of people were very critical of that, but the evidence does seem to suggest it actually has worked out really well in terms of, which is good, I think.
Right. My issue always comes down to, now this is where I do have some like libertarian leanings. At the end of the day, the decision to drink or smoke is a personal decision. And the same goes for marijuana. The choice to use it in any way eventually comes down to a personal decision.
Right.
Do I want to or don't I want to? And my issue with continuing to ban it is I think we've seen I think there's a fundamental truth when it comes to narcotics, and this stretches back, to the entirety of human history, is one way or the other people will try to find a way to get high. If it's not opium,
but why can't they just
cocaine.
get high on life, John?
Because life isn't strong enough.
No, I know what you're saying, and I agree with that too. But I think the argument. I don't think the argument is entirely convincing. The one I gave you about why would you add another potentially society. But I will say I think it's the strongest one there is in a favor of continued criminalization, in my opinion.
my issue with it comes down to we've kind of seen what it's like. Not
Yeah, it doesn't
everything
work.
works on escalation. It's an escalation problem. You criminalize marijuana, you make it a somewhat difficult to get your hands onto, right? And granted, it's not all that difficult to get your hands on it, but there's certain things about it. You have to, not to get all heavy on the drug trade, but you need a grower, you need a supplier, and then you need dealers, right? And there's a level of complexity and makes it somewhat difficult. Now, what we've seen though is there's been an advent of drugs that you don't need growers anymore. Meth, things like that. You don't need growers. You just need someone to go to the fucking grocery store and buy the right chemicals, and then you make it.
Yeah. Don't go into detail. We've all seen Breaking Bad.
Right. So now meth has just a shit ton of problems.
Right.
It's easily one of the most dangerous narcotics that we've seen, and it's become
totally
very
agree,
prevalent.
but right. So here's the question. Why doesn't the argument of personal choice apply to meth in the same way? Is it simply a matter of scale? Like the destruction caused outweighs the personal choice element?
Here's the issue.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just raising the point for interest.
It all comes down to, while the decision to take meth is a personal decision, the consequences of overdosing and things like that becomes a public issue.
I think that's fair. No, I agree. So here's a related topic, and I wonder if this would be the same. I don't feel like this would be the same in the States where you have an insurance-driven medical care system. But here, universal healthcare funded by taxation. It's pretty simple. However, recently there has been a debate, more and more, that says if you smoke, for example, and you get lung cancer, the burden of the costs for that self-inflicted, and I'm not saying it is necessarily, but you know what I mean, the perception of it being self-inflicted means that you shouldn't get as free a medical care, however you define it, but like you should have to contribute some way towards the surgery. The idea, and it's also they say it about obese people as well. If you're obese, you should and you get heart disease, why should the NHS be taking the burden of the cost of that from a condition that is to some extent self-inflicted? What do you think of that? I'm curious because I have an issue with this.
Here's the thing. I could find myself agreeing with that stance if it was a completely equal society, but it's not. And a lot of times you see, especially with areas like, specifically with like the obesity part of it, lower income areas become what they call food deserts.
Right.
The ability to get healthy foods for an affordable rate is very difficult for some people.
I completely agree, but I'll tell you my issue with this. My issue with this is when you look at what people are laying out, what they're choosing is actually based more on stigma than they realize, more on prejudice, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Because the example I would give is no one would consider doing this to someone who went into A&E with an accident they'd incurred on a motorbike. Right. And yet you're 30 times more likely to have a serious accident on a motorbike than a car. But nobody would say your injury is self-inflicted to someone who'd ridden a motorbike. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Or
Sorry, yeah, carry on.
It kind of goes the same way of, like, no one's going to say, oh, that person who was out fox hunting and it accidentally got shot with a shotgun. You know,
Right. Or even like
they're not gonna say that they shouldn't get treatment.
and even things you think of as completely wholesome, like, are we going to make a soccer player's going to have to pay for knee injuries? Because, well, people who play football get more knee injuries than people who don't. Isn't that the same type of self-infliction as someone who eats too much? Really, when you think about it,
Right.
And so my opinion is once you start down that road, where do you draw the line? And the line seems to be the people I don't like. So people who smoke, people who drink, people who... But no one ever says it about drinking, because everybody drinks, almost, you know? Doesn't come up anywhere near as often for drinking as it does for smoking, and yet drinking causes all kinds of long-term health problems.
Right.
But, yeah. No, I have big issues with that. For me, I feel like you have to stick to the principle. If you're going to have a universal healthcare system, you have to stick to the principle that everybody deserves healthcare. Otherwise, the whole thing breaks down. You know?
Right. You can't start picking and choosing.
Right.
Because what that opens the door for, honestly, is lobbies.
Right.
And I don't know what the lobby situation is in your country. But I can tell you from someone who lives in a country where the lobby system is very powerful, it's not good. You really don't want that, and
Yeah.
And that's what I think you run into, because what happens is you get the lobbies representing opposing factors, trying to influence decisions with healthcare.
Yeah. See, the difficulty we're having at the moment is what they're trying to do is the right-wing government has been trying for about 10 years now to kind of privatize the NHS frog in boiling water style, you know? So actually what we have at the moment is a lot of NHS services are actually run by private companies like... the biggest name in privatization is Virgin. That's pretty much their business model these days. They set up companies to take advantage of incoming privatization choices. That's pretty much all they do. They do trains, they do planes, the whole thing. And so, in theory, they run a comparable...
Damn you, Richard Branson.
In theory, what they do is they run a comparable service to what the NHS was doing, but they get paid by whoever the NHS used to pay instead of by the people. So the idea is it's run by all these individual private companies, but it's still free. In the end, user never notices any difference. In practice, they are underperforming across the board. And there have been things like there's a really terrible case of a woman with 2 disabled kids who require like pretty regular care, waiting 6 weeks to get an appointment, and then 2 days before her appointment getting a letter saying that, oh, this service has now switched to Virgin Care, so you've now got to make an appointment with them instead. All the records have moved up to them, everyone's on new appointments, you know? And
Jeez.
that's not a seamless transition, you know?
Right.
Anyway.
It's a shame too, because I actually kind of like a lot of what Richard Branson's like ideas are when it comes to like employment.
Richard Branson is a little bit of a con man.
Sure.
He talks a good game.
All businessmen are.
Right. He talks a good game about business ethics. My issue with Richard Branson is he campaigns very, very hard for privatization, right? All the time. And his argument is always, when Virgin comes in and they set up a company, they do a great job. And often they do. But by opening that door and by putting in bids for those doors to be opened, he also opens the door for people who won't do a job like Virgin do it.
Right.
Won't do it as well. And the biggest problem is the whole thing about privatization is open it up to the private sector, competition will bring down prices, the public will get a good deal. But when you look at public service contracts, they bid for a contract, but then there's no competition on the public's end. So privatization with trains, for example, is useless because trains only stop at one station, and they only run, in a privatized world, the minimum amount of services they are required to run within an hour, right? That's all they do. Which means... And that's preset by the company. So they say, you can run these lines, but you're going to have to run this many services per day, right? What that means is, in that situation, what train does the person get? Do they get the fancy Virgin train, or do they get the cheap train? Well, it depends. Which one will come first from the one station they can get it from and get them to the place they need to go on time? Because that's the one they'll get. And the contract, the person who won the contract doesn't matter. Because nobody's going to get on a train by a different company when there's only one train that day that's going to get them to where they need to go on time.
Right.
And it's the same with medical care. You know, nobody's going to choose. They're going to go where their GP recommends them. So, sorry, I could talk about privatization all day. It's my political bugbear. It's the worst thing in the world. It's the ultimate government secession of responsibility. The idea that it's cheaper for someone else to take care of these things, therefore we'll deregulate and let them do it. Ugh.
Right. It's one of those things where I am a firm believer in the idea of private enterprise for non-essential services.
Right.
You know, like if you want to open a grocery store, right? By all means, you should be able to open your own damn grocery store and not have to worry about, like, oh, the government grocery store, or, something like that, But once you start getting to the point of, like, oh, we're going to have private prisons. Like,
right.
No, that's not the private... industry's place.
The ideal thing for me would be, like, I'm not opposed to government-run businesses either in certain... Like, I wouldn't be opposed to a government grocery store, It just has to be fairly... Like you were saying, you get these places with food poverty and food deserts, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of a government branch of grocery stores might not be a bad idea in a place like that. Because then the government would be, say, obliged to put one decent, moderately priced grocery store in each town. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are benefits to that. But that's give or take, because the issue is we're not really suffering from a massive shortage of grocery stores. But what's weird is this is exactly what we were dealing with in the 80s in RoboCop. Like, RoboCop was about this. And people still really haven't learned at all that it doesn't work. But, yeah. There are a few things I think the state should be setting up that they don't do often enough. Like, I think a consumer-level bank would be a really good idea, so that, just so that people wouldn't lose their pensions in risky investments, But, anyway...
Well, that is a nice thing. Like, the U.S. does have a insurance policy for people's bank accounts. Basically, it's called the FDIC. And it says that basically if, you put your money into a bank and then the bank, uses your money and gets into shit that they shouldn't be doing or whatever, and they go under, the bank goes out of business. The government basically says, like, okay, you are insured, we will pay you back what you had in the bank to a certain degree.
Right.
I think the level is now like $1 million. So if you have $1 million in the bank, that's all insured. Which is why they tell you if you have large sums of money, spread it out. Don't put it all in one bank.
Yeah. It's
Which
interesting.
is just good, sound financial advice to begin with.
Yeah, definitely. Diversification. It's always a good thing.
Yeah.
So we have a question, and I think we're probably going to have to start finishing up soon. So how about we do this question and then wrap up? What do you reckon?
Sure.
It's from our good friend Blanche.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, question for John, if you guys will do any Q&A. You know what is happening UK, EU these days with attacks and fires, I assume, or Owen can explain to you. Are things like that also reported in the US so much? Are they such huge news?
Well, I'll tell you right now. Anything involving attacks, especially of a terrorist nature, is always big news over here. Basically because most of our news is based on fear, and not to sound like real like Armageddon style, like, oh my god, everything's fear, but it sells.
Right.
Crisis sells, and I don't think that's a uniquely American thing either.
No.
So yeah, not so much the Tower fire, but the Tower of London attacks, the Manchester thing. Yeah, those are all. I don't mean to sound dismissive of that. The Manchester.
No.
thing.
I mean, there's been a lot lately. You got to get through them in a bit of a list. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Where was it with the van?
Yesterday, Finsbury Park. That
right,
one
where they drove the van. Yeah.
Yeah, the recent one, because there was a similar one a while ago. But you mean the one? You mean the one yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, those all become news over here, but it's often used as a way to. Much of the news international news that happens over here, is then utilized to try to make a political point. Like gun control is a big thing over here. Big debate. And so, with people utilizing a van in an attack, there's been a lot of this, what are we going to do now? Ban all the vans and trucks and, that kind of nonsense. But and there's always the whole, like, okay, well, the person who led this attack was, happened to be Muslim. Let's kickstart that debate again about immigrants.
Yeah. Not this one yesterday, though.
No.
Just wanted to clarify.
Fact, right. And that's kind of the funny thing about that is because the attack did not involve an immigrant from the Middle East, there hasn't been a ton of talk about their identity.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it did involve some immigrants from the Middle East, but as victims, not as perpetrators.
Right. And that is kind of the sad state of affairs over here, at least.
I will say this, because this is a rarity. This is being charged as investigated as a terrorism, as a terrorist event, not a. It is being investigated under terrorism legislation for once, which doesn't normally happen with non-Muslim perpetrators.
Right.
It's been a big ongoing issue.
Right, and the same thing over here. That same thing happens.
And the Daily Mail, which is the worst newspaper in existence, reported it as clean-shaven white man drives van into crowd of people, which is gross.
Yes.
When you really think about it, like how do you even write that and live with yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like over here. There's a situation happened where a man, I believe they're on a bus or a train, I can't remember. He basically attempted to assault a pair of Muslim women, and they're in the garb and clearly identifiable, as Muslim.
Right.
And some people tried to get in his way and stop him, and unfortunately, two people were stabbed and killed.
I did hear
in the
about
process.
this.
And it it kind of became a thing because it took Donald Trump like 2 days before he tweeted about the situation. Instead, he went on like his usual tirades about fake news and people lying and being mean to him.
As he does.
Yeah. Whereas, like with the Manchester attack, it was like minutes after it happened, he was making some comment about it.
Right.
So,
well, a big
thing
there's
an issue over here where if the attack is not perpetrated by an immigrant or a Muslim, it does not get a lot of traction over here.
People over in this country were actually very upset about the way Trump treated the mayor of London, who is a Muslim. His man named Sadiq Khan, and he tweeted one of his quotes abhorrently out of context. He tweeted it said, Muslim mayor of London says there's nothing to be alarmed about during attack, But the full quote was, he'd said, tomorrow you'll see armed police on the streets. There's nothing to be alarmed about.
Right.
What he was saying was, if you see police with guns, don't immediately think we're in a firefight situation, because we don't have armed police every day here. It's a rare occasion. If they're going to be routinely on the streets, you need to let people know it's not a... But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump doesn't even know that we don't have armed police here as standard. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
But, yeah.
So, here's a question, and it's been something that's been kind of on my mind as of lately.
Uh-huh.
And maybe this is just me trying to delude myself and feel better, but doesn't it kind of feel like we're at a tipping point? We're kind of at a breaking point.
Well, that doesn't sound like feeling better. That sounds worse.
No, as in like these politicians who are clearly out of touch. Like Theresa May running through the wheat fields.
Well, this British election, which everyone's calling the strangest election in the world because the winners feel like they lost and the losers felt like they won.
Right.
A big part of it was the youth turnout was higher than it's been for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like part of what you're talking about. I feel like the reason politicians seem more out of touch than ever right now is I feel like people our age and younger are actually more in touch than they've been in a long time.
Right.
And I'll tell you something else I hadn't seen a lot in the recent attacks. There's always some people on Twitter who are saying, or wherever you are, saying things like, don't immediately jump to the conclusion that this is a Muslim attacker because it sounds like a terrorist incident. Don't. That kind of thinking creates problems. Do you know what I mean? There's always the people who say the sensible things like, don't immediately jump to any conclusions, things like that, and attack all. You know what I mean?
Right.
What I saw after the Manchester one that I'd never seen before is that was most people, not a few people saying, keep your heads a bit. It was most people saying stuff like that. And that feels different. Mm-hmm. There's a more of a humanity to it than there used to be.
Right, because that's something that I think... I mean, it's going to be quite another year, maybe. It's going to be the next midterm election, essentially, over here, where you're first going to, I think, see this. But one of the biggest issues that came from our election was honestly not like anything to do with like Russian meddling or anything like that. which, you know, is an issue, but it was turnout. And it's one of the things that people kept on kind of taking Trump to task for, is that he did not even win a majority of the popular vote in the lowest turnout in, like, American history. Like, it's one of the lowest turnouts in recent history.
Did you hear? America. I totally agree, and I'm gonna talk about something Theresa May did, which I think is very funny. But did you hear that in all his interviews for quite a while afterwards, he was carrying around glossy printouts of his electoral college votes map and showing the people interviewing him? Like, he was just handing it out. Like, have you seen this? Like
yeah, we were there.
We were watching. But so the reason I think we had quite surprisingly high turnout under the young, and I think Theresa May really made quite a stupid mistake. And I got a lot of I was in a swing seat potentially, right? Because it had swung to Conservative last time, and it stayed Conservative this time as well. And it used to be a safe seat, but they lost it last time, Labour. So we got a lot of mail through because they really wanted to keep this seat, you know, and they knew they had a chance because they won it last time. And a lot of the mail took a tactic that I think must have sounded like a really good idea, and I think really backfired on them, and I think it's partly responsible for why the turnout was so high. But they kept putting on their leaflets things like, if I lose just 6 seats, Jeremy Corbyn will win. Or things like, you might think Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have a chance, but look at these other elections, and they'd be like, surprise Brexit vote, surprise Trump election. Do you know what I mean? Right. I think a lot of people thought Corbyn couldn't win. That was the big attack they were making on him for years. From the minute he was elected, the right wing was saying Jeremy Corbyn's unelectable. And then their entire campaign turned into, by the way, Jeremy Corbyn's really surprisingly electable. And I think there must have been somebody who went, just 6 seats and she's out? Oh, I'll vote then. She lost, by the way, significantly more than 6 seats and is refusing to leave.
Oh, of course. Well, because that was kind of the issue here, was there was a lot of issues when it came to primary season, because by and large, the popular candidate among young people was Bernie Sanders. I mean, across the board, when it came to young people, he was way more popular than Hillary Clinton was for the Democratic side. But the issue then came was the Democratic National Convention. They had already kind of decided that they wanted Hillary. And there's a lot of issues where, you know, a lot of the chairmen, or chairwoman, I should say, for the DNC at the time, you know, was a Hillary supporter, a staff member, all this sort of stuff. So the DNC actually never threw any support behind Bernie Sanders when it came to, you know, campaigning or anything like that. It was always Hillary, which matters. You know, campaigning matters. And a lot of the narrative became, oh, Bernie doesn't have a chance of winning the primary. Vote for Hillary. So a lot of people did. It was a lot of like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to waste my vote on Bernie Sanders. When it comes to primary, I'm just going to give it to Hillary, and she'll be the candidate one way or the other. And then she got the nomination and then completely botched her campaign, her presidential campaign. Because, you know, the poll numbers started to come out and she was shown as a clear leader in all the polls. And then she started to just ignore states. Important states, like, for instance, mine. Wisconsin is what's considered a swing state.
Right.
It can go either way, and it has traditionally actually been Democratic and liberal, but you know, in certain situations, Especially when it comes to outsiders. That's a big one.
I also think
Wisconsin
the difference between Trump and Clinton is a very different political debate than the difference between left and right.
Yes. But like for one of the big issues is that when Hillary campaigned, she actually kind of actively ignored the states that voted for Bernie in the primary. And to give Trump's campaign team credit, they recognized it. And that's why leading up to the election, Trump made at least 3 or 4 stops here in Wisconsin. And Hillary did not make any. And then we saw when the election came, she lost states that were considered safe for her.
So, I'm curious. You live in a state that went for Trump.
Yes.
I'm guessing that means you know some Trump voters.
Yes.
How are they feeling now? Have you seen the Trump grit you hear about? Or is it more sticking with him?
It's not so much Trump regret or Trump grit. Or, that's so stupid. It's more of, hey, let's just not talk about politics, huh? You know, it's a lot of that where it's, you know, no one really wants to talk about the stuff that's happening.
I just noticed this attitude a lot with. So I used to be very, very passionately argumentative when it came to religion. I still care about religion a lot, but I used to be very, very angry about religion. It used to bother me a lot more than it does now. And I still maintain that I don't think there are good reasons to believe in God, but I'm not as angry about it as I used to be. But one of the things I used to notice was I grew up in a very religious community in Scotland, and I've been around religious people a lot. And I'm going to say, I'm going to be honest about how I feel. Most people who aren't religious have been challenged on it a lot. Most people who are religious haven't been challenged on it that much. It's just a factor of if you are religious, you were probably raised in a religious family and things like that. It doesn't come up that much. And so very often what you'll find is most religious people aren't very good at defending their beliefs, nor should they have to be, particularly, in my opinion, if they don't want to. That's perfectly fine. They don't have to talk about it. But what used to happen a lot is you would get religious people who wanted to convert you, do a terrible job, and then all of a sudden didn't want to talk about it ever again, and got very prickly at the suggestion that you bring it up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm seeing a lot more of that with politics now as well. People on the right who all of a sudden don't want to talk about it as much as they used to.
Right.
And it's that same... obviously, religion and politics kind of different. Not always, but kind of different. Mm-hmm. But it's that same very prickly don't want to talk about it. You know? That walking on eggshells.
And the big issue right now, like, especially over here, is... like, the last time we had a conservative president was George W. Bush. And you would... the thing was about him was... well, I wasn't a big fan of him, and I know a lot of people who weren't. The decisions he made were still the kind of decisions that could be measured in pros and cons.
Right.
Right? It's like, well, okay, I don't like this decision because of this, you know, XYZ, and a person, you know, could go against me, go, well, I like it because of this, this, and this. And you could debate it on those merits. And so there was still plenty of political discourse.
Right, you could have a theoretical discussion about it.
Right, and then the same thing happened with Obama. You know, there was a lot of, you know, I mean, yeah, you had your loons who were all like, oh, he's a Muslim, and, you know, he's from Kenya, and all this sort of stuff. And when people started doing that, it's like, okay, well, I'm just not going to talk with you because this is just going to be a waste of time, But for the most part, in my experience, the people I had debates with were still acting on a pro and con system. Like, okay, well, Obama had the bailout here. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And, stuff like that. With Trump, though, it's because so much of what he's done defies not just logic, but like foresight. Like, it's really hard to look at the things he's doing on, okay, what is the end game here? Like, what is he attempting to do?
Right.
And it just defies any sort of like so much of what he's done and says and does, it just goes beyond, okay, well, here's some pros and cons. It's just a lot of what?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think when it comes to the midterm election, especially, you're going to see turnouts in numbers we haven't seen before. Because midterm elections over here are notorious for having low turnouts.
Right. And Trump's stupidity, because the simple fact is, all the way through the election, people didn't want you to quantify the stupidity. But what it's really becoming clear is, and I think his policies were abhorrent, but I think his main issue is incompetence. He's not competent. He's not even competent enough to realize that his policies are abhorrent to people. He's just not competent. I think people have made a very good case that he's actually senile. And I don't mean that disparagingly. People have made a very good case that his mind is not what it was many years ago, to some quite extreme extents. But, we're not his doctor. We can't diagnose that. But I think...
Well, because you're seeing a very interesting thing happen in politics recently, especially now with all the court stuff that's been happening, with the investigations and into his campaign and all this stuff, is there is a significant amount of Republican congressmen and senators who are not necessarily trying to distance themselves from Trump, but they're very much, I don't have an opinion on that sort of thing.
I hope to God people never let them forget that they backed him until it was too late.
And it's funny because what's happening is a level of political involvement by the public that they just were not prepared for.
Well, it's so silly, but the SNL sketch works. The Melissa McCarthy, Sean Spicer one works.
Right.
Because so many people were watching those briefings that weren't before. Like, I know SNL is it's always topical, right? It's always political. But has there ever been a long-running, prominent character on there that's based on someone as relatively niche as a press secretary?
Yeah, exactly. No, there hasn't.
People are watching. People are actually watching what's going on. And people were watching that and finding it funny before Melissa McCarthy did it. That's why the gag works.
Well, I was going to talk about, there's another big one that's been kind of going on, is these town hall meetings. And the town hall meeting has been around forever. It's been this thing where, senators and congressmen, once a week or, a couple times a month, they'll hold a meeting.
We have them here. We call them surgeries. I don't know why they call them surgeries, but they're called surgeries. I guess it's antiquated. It probably comes from the same...
Right.
But yeah.
But they're basically like, okay, well, here's, the issue that we're dealing with in Congress. I'm just kind of reporting back to you, sort of thing. And, up until this go-around, it's been a case of, we're having these town hall meetings. 30 people show up, either people who are just like super upset, or older people who who go because that's just what you do. What they're seeing now, they're holding these town hall meetings, and the places are packed. They're absolutely just packed with people, and out the door sort of thing. And people are legitimately going, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? And they're getting angry and they're getting upset. And you're starting to see a lot of these congressmen just react in the worst ways ever. Just like, shut up! Shut up!
Was this the one where the guy said no one's ever died from a lack of health care?
Yeah, shit like that. Because that's the thing, they're being questioned by the public with questions that they don't have, their team's not preparing them for. It's not like going on,
right.
a television news thing. Like, okay, well, these are what they're going to ask you. This
and
is,
it is showing,
blah, blah, blah.
It is showing how unbelievably out of touch they are, because, you would have to be incredibly privileged to even think of saying no one's ever died from a lack of healthcare, to be that detached from reality. Yeah. And, it's a good sign for everybody, because America tends to lead Britain politically, so hopefully we'll go the same way.
It's the same thing as, like no one's ever starved because they never ate.
Right. Yeah.
But, what do you say we wrap up, huh?
Yeah, let's wrap up.
All right.
You have been listening to, while possibly watching, the Those Aren't Biscuits podcast, episode 120. If you would like to find more wonderful episodes, you can do that by going to notcookies.wordpress.com. What is it? Notbiscuits.wordpress.com, or is it not cookies, that one? It's not biscuits, right?
not biscuits.wordpress.com.
Yes, it is. You can check out my YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/Owen Adams. You can find John on Twitter by going to @JohnCPerson. And where else can they get you, John? Remind me.
They can go to my blog, which is johncperson.wordpress.com, on Twitter, which is @JohnCPerson. And, and don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Please, we'd really appreciate some more subscribers on the Not Biscuits channel. We are putting new content up all the time, not just these shows, but we started doing some Let's Plays on there, and there's some other fun stuff on there for you to check out.
Yeah, it's been going well.
Yeah, the more subscribers and likes and stuff that we see, the better idea we have about what you guys like, and we can do more of it.
Yeah,
basically. So yeah, help us help you, by giving you more free entertainment.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. See. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. And we are done.